So I suggest the floor is open if you have any questions. And then I will just summarize in 3 sentences. Please, just one by one. We can't handle the... Yes, darling.
I'll volunteer. To actually all of you, David, especially you mentioned low reporting rates today and yesterday as well. And also talked about and the secondary traumatization. And I was wondering about the difficulties that come from the gap between the psychological needs of abused children and the needs of the system, the criminal justice system. The need to speak about the abuse in terms, not in their own terms, the children's terms, but in the terms of, under the conditions of giving a testimony, etc. I was just wondering whether the programs in Germany approach this gap, and also, David, whether you have any optimistic thoughts about diversions or making the system more tuned to the victims.
Why don't we start with Sabine?
I understand. Yes, thank you very much. I think this is an extremely important issue. Who is responsible to report? How capable are, first of all, the adult or a friend from the peer to deal with what he or she heard, and how capable or how is the structure of the system or the context. And I think this gap between the needs and the needs or necessities are still on the table. In Germany, for instance, there are some experiences how to focus mainly on the needs of the victimized child, but we do not solve that problem. So what I think is, first of all, and that is, I try to give just one brief thought from Daphna's excellent discussion, is that in general we have to focus on children's well-being in general. So that fits for this stressful and harmful situations, and this make also adults capable focus more on the needs of children.
Well, there's a lot you could talk about here, but I think I'll just make a couple of points. One is probably the most useful thing that we could do would be to set up a system where we much more systematically get feedback from children and families about how the system is performing when it responds to an allegation. And because that's the only way in which I think we're going to really make it child and family friendly. We've done a little bit of research on this, for example, at our center. And I think one of the interesting things that we found out about was that, the children were fairly happy about the way in which they were interviewed. They were fairly happy about treatment that was provided. The thing that they had the most complaints about was the level of communication that they received from the people, particularly in the justice system, about where cases were at, what was going to happen next, and there was a feeling that they didn't hear enough. So that would be a very useful kind of, that's the kind of thing that I think provides very useful immediate feedback that we can incorporate in our system. I think we need to do a lot more of that.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Yes. Could you sort of...
Prefer to shut down all possibility of discussion on normal regards to problematic behavior, but also normative exploratory behaviors among children, which they do need in order to develop healthy sexual roles.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
השאלה שלי בנושא של מניעה ומוגנות שדיברו על שזה אחד הנושאים המרכזיים צריך לעשות בהם. מה החרדה שלהם המקצועית, האם באמת צריך להיות אנשים שהם מומחים בנושאים האלה שהם יעברו את הסדנאות, שהאם ניתן להכשיר צוותי הוראה מקומיים שהם בעצם יעברו את זה, וזה באמת גם כלכלית, כי צריך להביא סדנאות של גורמים מקצועיים.
The gentleman is asking if you people think that the professional education should be performed by professionals or by people from the community who have been trained without necessarily being professionals in the child sexual abuse area.
Yeah, I think both is useful and necessary. And there are some discussion how it can work. This kind of networking is, I think, the case that we have to figure out more sensitively.
כן, אנחנו צריכים לקצר כי רוצים לסלק אותנו מהעולם בכוח. כן.
How can we combine all the dynamic fields, like the health system, the educational system, police, and social welfare, together for the health and the welfare of the child, and how can we, the new area would be all together, how can we, because I feel that we have lack integration between these two,
Yeah.
I think this really depends on the tradition of the country and the tradition of how the systems are organized. And I can give an example from Germany. The health system doesn't support this new law on early prevention. But as we know from Howard, that early prevention programs, home visits and so on, are extremely important in general. And but they are not in. And that is a real, in Germany it's a question of who has the power, which system has the power and which not.
Yes, please. בכל רם, כי אני הייתי בתותחנים בצורה.
אני רוצה לשאול, האם טיפול בפגיעות מיניות הוא חובה ולא צריך לוותר עליו בכל מקרה של פגיעה מינית, בכל סיפור, או שאפשר במקרים מסוימים, ואני רוצה לדייק במקרים שזה פגיעה קלה יחסית, וכשיש משפחה מאוד מכילה ומאוד מחבקת לילד הקטן, האם במקרים כאלה טיפול הוא מתייתר ואולי הוא מוסיף על הפגיעה? זאת שאלה, אני שואלת למה, כי יש הורים שכן מחבקים וכן מכילים את הילדים שלהם ומעדיפים שלא להגיע לטיפול.
The question was whether intervention in child sexual abuse, professional intervention, is compulsory, knowing that there are some families that would prefer their children not to have the system interfere and them solve the problems by themselves.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, it seems to me there have been some experiments with things like family group conferencing that have gotten, popular in some aspects of child protection, mostly not in the case of sexual abuse, because these are violations of criminal statutes, and typically law enforcement feels a strong need to take some kind of action. usually when families say they want to take care of it on their own, it means that they just want to do nothing about it. But it seems to me that it might be possible to develop some models where under some kind of supervision in certain kinds of situations that families develop plans to do some kind of some kind of protection of the child, some kind of supervision of the offender, and could manage a situation. I think it would have to involve situations where the risk was seen as relatively low, and where the criminal nature of the offense was seen as rather minor, because you'd have to get the cooperation of the justice system in such an arrangement. But I think it's something that would be interesting to explore.
Thank you. I just want to take 1 minute to summarize and tell you what I learned from this outstanding panel. In my view, social problems such as child sexual abuse have a life of their own, and a death of their own, and a career of their own. I think, looking from the heights of my age, I look at domestic violence, which is my big love in research. And it was very trendy, and it's, Baruch Hashem, going out of the moda. Okay? What I'm trying to tell you is that in child sexual abuse, the career is very clearly delineated, and you could hear it from David today and from Sabina in some ways. There was a coming out stage from the closet. There was a dramatic stage in which all of us tried to present the world with the major catastrophes arising from child sexual abuse. There is a calming down stage, which we are at the end of it right now. And then there is a decrease in the percentages, which flatten it out and normalize it. And unfortunately, when it's normalized, it disappears, as if it never happened before. And I'm trying to say that I think we should be very careful in not letting the problem disappear, but understand it as part of everyday life of all of us, and try to think about our communities and how to strengthen communities in order to deal with the normalcy and the trivia of child sexual abuse. Thank you for coming.